Welcome, everyone, to Live from my drum room. It's a pleasure to see you all today. We have a great show in store for you today. We're going to talk about Steve Gadd's book, Gadd, A Life in Time. And of course, with me, I have Steve Gadd. I also have Rob Wallace and Joe Bergamini of Hudson Music. Rob is owner of Hudson and the producer of the book. And Joe Bergamini is the senior editor at Hudson, and he is the author of the book. So yeah, we're just going to get right down to it here and get the show on the road. So without any further ado, please welcome three returning champions: Rob Wallace, Joe Bergamini, the man himself. Welcome, Steve Gadd, everybody.
Woo! Happy New Year, everybody.
Well, I want to first of all congratulate the three of you on this incredible book that I am enjoying so much. And you know, you can read it cover to cover, or you can just sort of jump around a whole bunch through it. You know what I mean? You don't have to read it like from start to finish. You can skip ahead to the transcriptions, look at the photos, the interviews like with Gary Katz and the, you know, just all the information that's in here. It's chock full. So great job, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And, you know, one thing I just wanted to say, you know, this isn't by way of any commercial endorsement or anything, but, you know, we created a Spotify playlist that mirrors the book. And so many people that have written to me say they listen to the playlist as they're reading the book and, you know, obviously going down through the charts and stuff, but it really brings the book to life when you're reading a chapter about, you know, Chick Corea or Ricky Lee Jones, and then you put the track on that Steve's talking about, and the way the track was created, or, you know, whatever his discussion was on that song. It's really great. It's like a 3D. It becomes like a 3D book, you know.
It's been fun because I've had several students come in the last few weeks with the notation book. Just show up the lesson with this, so it just has the notation in it, and it's working out great. You could just study that, like you said, John. Or if you don't read, you know, we hope that people who don't read don't be intimidated by the fact that there's notation in there. It's still plenty of in there besides that.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, I mean, I don't really read much, and I find that there's just so much other stuff in there. I mean, music, that is, but it doesn't deter me at all, because there's so much other. I mean, just the pictures, like we talked about, some of the never before seen photos from the Gadd family archives are to me worth it. You know, they're just beautiful photos, and so guys, so back up a minute. You had great success with Gaddaments. A book that Steve you know, to give everybody the backstory, we all know it, but during the pandemic, Steve found himself with free time, and he was working on all these exercises with his practice sticks with the rubber tips, started writing them out. And then all of a sudden there's a book, and who better? Yeah.
I had been working on it for a while, and when I thought that when I really saw it start taking shape, I called Rob and asked if he would be, you know, interested, you know, and then as a result, here we are.
Yeah.
We really got into the Gaddaments thing. I mean, we worked really hard, and then that was sort of my thing to bring to the table. And then you know, after we finished Gaddaments, and we really had a nice rapport. You know, we had got into a nice groove, working together and knowing each other and becoming better friends. And they, you know, Rob has been talking about doing a book like this for a while, and I've been sort of dragging my feet, because just trying to. I didn't know if I could, you know, remember a lot of this stuff, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And up until we started working on it, I really didn't have the time. So, you know, they had a lot of stuff in place before we even started working on it, and you know what I mean. So it was like, well, we hit the ground running, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and they made it very enjoyable, and it was nice. I was able to, read, the story, the print, and sort of get it in order of the way I remember it happening. You know what I mean? Which was a big thing for me. You know
Yeah,
what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done it alone. And these guys were, it was really their thing. So I appreciate it, you guys. I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Steve, it was a pleasure. Let me just back up. I just got to clarify one thing. Before you called me on Gaddamit, Stefano, I think Carol called and she said, Rob, you got to help me out here. He's driving me crazy. He's up all night tapping on the kitchen counter with those sticks.
Yeah.
I said, tell him to call me. Let's see what we can do.
We can, yeah. We might be
So
able
thank
to.
you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Tell Carol, she
And
started
John,
this whole monster.
John
Yes, Steve.
came up with the title.
Yes.
Gaddamans. Yeah, we were asking. I asked him what he thought, and he came up with that thing.
Yeah.
Again, Johnny, all as always.
A rare moment of me having a good idea, Steve.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
Yeah,
It
thank
was
you.
brilliant,
Thank you.
man. Look at,
Thank
and we have a whole clothing line now.
I know.
It's available worldwide.
I wear this shirt every day, whether it needs to be in the laundry or not.
Yeah, you have to get a few more of them so you can rotate.
Nah, that's.
It's
Like,
not rock and roll.
it was it took a long time. We wanted to do it right, and after working with Steve, obviously, he and I go back to the early 80s when
Man.
we started doing, the first instructional videos. And they made a big mark, in the world at the time and in the drumming world. And I just felt that we couldn't do anything of lesser, kind of importance and value. So, that was Gaddaments. And like Steve said, it really, we got in this great kind of comfortable routine. And, we would do these Zoom calls. It was so enjoyable to me. Joe would, we would talk a lot about the song selection for the book. Obviously, where do you start on a, 50-year career, so we tried to really get some of the obvious ones and some of the not so obvious ones that we wanted to cover. And the routine was that Joe would line up a couple of songs and we would do a Zoom call and play the music because Steve hadn't heard a lot of it, maybe some of it since it was recorded or he last played it live or, some of the stuff I know had to be 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So he would sit there and listen to it and sort of, we would watch him enjoying the music. So it was really a very unique experience for me, I know, and I think for Joe. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was just special. And then to hear the stories about how the recordings came together, these iconic pieces of music, really, it was, I felt blessed that we were in a position to do something like this and have Steve put the kind of time in to do it, to make sure it was right, that he did.
Yeah, that was the key. And I'd made a note about that, just the fact that, obviously it's a retrospective on Steve's career, but you have the participation of Steve himself, which isn't often the case, as you know. People write books about famous people, and there's always that question of like, well, did it really happen that way? And, is it just the authors? He's talked to a few people who might have been there, and it's maybe a little suspect, but to have Steve, they're sort of recalling these sessions too. And people like Gary Katz, who was at the Asia session. That's what makes this book so special and unique. And just one more thing I'll add too, just the fact that it's a retrospective on Steve's entire career up until, a few months ago, basically. And also it's a great documentation of the New York session scene, the New York music scene, which was such a vital, important part of history. And it's also told in there with, Tony Levin and Chick and all the different, the guys and stuff, all the bands that Steve worked with during that time. So well done, man.
One little story, and I want Steve to talk. But one amazing thing that happened was, at a certain point, we were kind of midway in the project probably, and I said to Steve and Carol, it would be wonderful if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it, to reach out to James Taylor to see if he would, write a little something, write his thoughts about Steve, whatever. And they said, yeah, Carol gave me the contact person at James's office. And so long story short, she said, yes, James is interested. When do you need it? I said, a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks went by. She emailed back. She said, this happened about 4 or 5 times. James was on the road and he was doing different things around the country, traveling a bunch. And then one day I get an email, with what James wrote. It was 5 pages long. And I was sitting there like floored. I was like speechless. And I said, wow, this is incredible. And, I showed it to Joe. We were both like, kind of, gasping for breath on this. Obviously James Taylor's a good writer, he has a way with words. So I wrote back and I said, would it be okay? This is such a perfect, introduction to the book. And would it be okay if we put it up front in the book? Because it's, it was lengthy. And James wrote back and said, yeah, his office said, as long as you don't, use his name, we didn't put it on the cover. A lot of people don't even know it's in the book, but there's this beautiful written piece from James. And everybody that we reached out to, Eddie Gomez, on and on and on, we're so thrilled to be involved and spend time. We did a bunch of Zoom calls with different guys, Tony Levin. It was really an amazing thing, and a testament to their friendship and love of Steve to be willing to put the time in to make sure we got it right.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Well said. And the forward, just what James wrote is just so incredible. It's so beautiful and so well written, and so, it's so James, obviously. And just the way he talks about Steve and yeah, it's great. There's so much of that in this book.
I really appreciate everybody that took the time, and became a part of this. We all really appreciate their contribution.
Yeah.
Steve, what was it like for you? When we were doing those Zoom sessions, I'm sorry to jump in here, John, with a question.
No, this is great. This is great. Yeah.
What was it like for you to hear some of this music, in what I would assume, a lot of that stuff was in, a really long time. What did it feel like listening back to it?
It was fantastic. I don't really listen to that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm listening to what I'm working on now, or whatever, what Carol likes to listen to, and so I don't really listen to the old stuff. But man, it was like I heard that America the Beautiful. I forgot that there was like a bonus track on Here and Now, and I had forgotten all about it, and boy, when I heard it, when you guys when we listened to it together, I was just real proud of it, man. I mean, those guys, you could really feel their, Richard T's favorite piano player was Ray Charles, and we copied that Ray Charles arrangement, which I happen to think should be the national anthem. I think it's much it sums it up a lot better than the Star Spangled Banner. But yeah, I was surprised and very proud too, and really proud of that. It's something I have forgot about. That was great.
For
Well,
everyone
I-
listening, that I just want to say that's the Gadd Gang Here and Now record that Steve's referring to, that the bonus track, the America the Beautiful.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I was just going to add that, you know, knowing Rob and Joe, there aren't anybody better people than these two guys to kind of set the foundation for something like this, Steve. And I know you'll agree with that too, that and having worked with Rob on many projects where, you know, I'm sure he made it pretty easy for you, and you know, in terms of, you know, presenting sort of the outline of what they wanted to do and making suggestions for music, which, because Rob, you know his catalog probably better than most people, so I'm sure you and Joe, you as well, were able to come in and suggest, you know, songs, and I was so happy to see some of the songs that in the book transcribed that I think tend to get overlooked, like we talked about, like Do the Hustle. Which I think is just it's such a hip tune, such a hip drum part. And, you know, it maybe because it's a disco song, people sort of overlook that, but it's way beyond anything like that. It's a serious piece of music with, you know, it's the Stuff Band. So, you know what I mean? Come on.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of
yeah.
fun. I remember those sessions with Van McCoy. And he did his own things, and then he did a lot of producing of other bands of other singers and stuff that Stuff was the rhythm section on. So we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
We talked about, Steve, you know, the years that went by in that very short span of years, you did like every possible style of music you could play, right? In New York, you were on that, but then Stuff was happening and Chick was happening, and you were just doing so many things. It's amazing to see it. It was like really condensed period of time there. It was crazy. The Paul Simon stuff, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Paul Simon, Carly Simon, you know,
The CTI stuff.
all of the CTI stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff that I did. You know, things that Phil Ramone was producing, you know what I mean? So it was just like some Kenny Loggins stuff I was working on, and he did some things with Quincy, and we did Sinatra, and did some stuff for the Wiz, you know. I mean, it was a great period for music.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things happening style wise, and I was, you know, I was lucky enough to be a part of that stuff, and lucky enough to like all the different styles and try to play them the best that I could, because the music inspired me, you know.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head too when you were saying all the different styles and genres where, you know, you weren't just a guy that played pop tunes or, I mean, you were playing everything. And I was going to ask Steve, and I don't know if you can recall, and maybe Rob and Joe might even have a better idea, but do you remember what maybe one of the first like commercially successful songs you played on, like a hit song that we'd consider like a AM radio sort of?
I think it was 50 Ways.
Well,
That's the one.
Yeah, I was going to say, Do the Hustle was even before that, though.
Oh,
I mean,
maybe then it was
Yeah.
then it
Maybe
was,
it was-
it could have been The Hustle.
could
I
have been,
mean,
okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I just, there were a few songs, you know, there were some songs back in those days that I recorded that were being played a lot on the
Yeah.
radio. And I remember, yeah, the Hustle that was a good one, and 50 Ways was played a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, crazy times, man. It was like good time for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I got a lot of good memories. I made a lot of good friends, and I'm still friends with the ones that are still around. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we had a really good interview. One of the last people we interviewed, Steve, was Tony Levin. And, you know, I just want to say on this broadcast that Steve, to hear you say what you said really means a lot to me. I mean, to come in, you and Rob have known each other a long time, to come in as a writer and, try to write your story with you, supervising it. I mean, I was pretty uh, nervous, wanted to make sure I could do a good job. So uh, what an honor it's been to really to tell the story, and thank you for, I want to say from Hudson for sure, but from me personally, thank you for trusting me. I mean, I worked my ass off to do a good job, so I'm glad you like it.
You did a great job, and
Great job.
I do trust you guys, and I look forward to doing, more another project together, man. I'm working on it.
We're always ready for more abuse, so.
Yeah.
But my point was bringing that up is that, for those who maybe haven't read the book, that we did a lot of research before we started talking to Steve on these Zoom calls. And so I went out and consumed everything I could find, old Modern Drummer interviews, went through the archives, read things on the internet, tried to piece together the timeline. And of course, Steve read old interviews with you about your childhood. And then as we put that all together, it was really cool getting, you mentioned Phil Ramone. So we had access to some older interviews that Rob had done, I think for the American Drummer Achievement Awards, Phil Ramone, Russ Titleman. And so you get this whole tapestry of information, and then we had these Zoom calls. And then when we spoke to Tony Levin, one of the really cool things he said at the end, and I used a lot of it to close the book because it was poignant to me what he was saying. But he just thought so highly of you, and I was always really interested in when you came to New York and what you did, and he pointed out how hard you worked on your sound and your groove and everything coming from the stuff you guys were doing in Rochester, and that it's just amazing, both he and Eddie Gomez, to have them talk in such detail about your relationship, and what they what they get still out of playing with you. And if anybody hasn't seen that in the book, it's pretty special, I think.
I loved reading that Tony's comment about that, how hard Steve worked to kind of to prepare himself to work in the studios and do the kinds of records that he ended up doing, that he got called to do.
When I first came to New York, I was living with Tony and his wife at the time in Yorktown Heights, and I forgot. I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
When
Tony?
you were to New York and you were living together in Yorktown Heights.
Oh yeah. So when we get, Tony had been there for 3 years. I was in the Army for 3, and then he introduced me to people that he had met, and Mike Maneri was one of them, and Mike had a jingle company. He'd call me to do jingles, and I'd have to, at the studios had they had bass drum and tom-toms, but you had to bring your own trap case. And before I had a trap case, I had all my gear in like this bag, this big bag that Tony would take one side and I would take the other, and from the parking lot, we'd carry this shit to the studio together, man. I mean, it was like, and you know what? It never seemed, we were never complaining. It was always fun. We were excited about what job we were going to do together. We drove in together. I mean, it was like great times for me.
I would say if you find another member of your band that's willing to help you carry your drums crap into the studio or the gig, that's a special relationship.
That's a lifelong friend right there. Yeah.
That's a keeper. That's a keeper.
That's a keeper. Steve, I have to tell you that your daughter, Mary Beth, is watching and says hello.
Oh, you're right. Tell her I love her.
Wow.
I sure will. And well, you just did. And we all love Mary Beth.
That's nice. It's a family affair, Stefano.
It sure is. It sure is. I just, I loved reading so many of those stories, like you mentioned, Tony, I think that's in there, Tony helping you carry your trap case. And, I go back to, I'm going to just tell a quick story. My first experience with Steve, though I didn't know it was Steve at the time, was Do the Hustle. And I've told Steve this story, and it's probably a boring story to anybody else but me. But the band that I was playing in at the time, 1975, we were in like junior high school or high school. And that was a big song on the radio. And my bandmates, the leader of the band, wanted to learn it. And I was adamantly against anything that was disco. And I said, no way. We're not going to play. I don't want to play anything disco. And I finally gave in. I'd heard the song a few times on the radio and I just sort of dismissed it. I remember sitting at band practice and actually listening to the song and listening to what the drummer was playing. And I went, wow, okay, this is actually going to be kind of fun because there's more to this than I thought. It's not just a straight, four on the floor kind of thing. In fact, it was really challenging and I couldn't play it the way the drummer, who I later found out was Steve, was playing it. And I remember like being frustrated going like, Jesus, it's a simple disco song, but I can't for the life of me make it swing and make it groove and make it sound like the way this guy's making it sound. And the fills have such a great little twist to them. And I think it's a masterpiece, Steve. I really do. I think it's a lesson and it's so common. I think it's a common theme in what you do. I mean, you play some really incredibly difficult things that you hear them right away and you go, there's no way in hell I can play that. But then you play some things that sound really simple. And then when you try to play those things that sound simple, you can't get close to it because it's just got that little Gadd twist to it. So anyway, there's my hustle story, which we'll play in a little bit.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a question that I realized I didn't ask. Maybe I asked, but I don't remember asking it. Steve, I'm going to switch gears a little to the Chick Corea stuff. Do you remember in the book we tell the story of recording like the Leprechaun, and you'd said, there was like music stands with charts going around you, like because they were so long.
Yeah.
When on those charts, were they like lead sheet style, or did Chick have like ensemble figures written on them? Like
Those were the piano scores.
oh,
So they pretty much had everything on there, you know what I mean? And I could sort of pick and choose what I thought should be, brought out and what shouldn't be, you know what I mean? And yeah, it was challenging, man. It was, I mean, that's the one session where I think I used all of whatever I knew at the time came in handy. Whatever studying I had done at Eastman, whatever, however good my sight reading got, it was like I needed it for that session, and it was and it was great, man. It was great. The thing I've never played another one like that, another session that was that where the music was that intricate and we were doing it live. Yeah, that was a special album, The Leprechaun.
Yeah, really. I remember, Steve, seeing you play at, I forget where it was. It was with Chick doing the Three Quartets record. And, it was like, a good sized stage. Your drums are obviously in the center of the stage. And I was looking and you were surrounded by music stands, and there like 6 or 7 music stands, and then somebody came out and put all this chart. It was like a phone book going around, and I said, no, there's no way he's gonna read like 14 pages of music live like that. It was unbelievable. Michael Brecker. I mean, it was just a stunning performance. And you were like looking over the toms, kind of trying to read this stuff and playing and just burning it down. It was really, really your reading chops. I don't know. I know you did a lot of reading in at Eastman, but did they improve as time went on? I mean, it looked
They
like you
did.
could read like from the distance, you could read like this complex music.
When I got to New York after being in the Army for 3 years, and then before that being in college for 5, and in the Army especially, I was in a band where they had arrangers and they were writing new arrangements all the time. So that's where my sight reading improved. It just kept on getting better and better. It's the type of thing with reading, the more you do, the better you get. You know what I mean? And and back in those years, sessions were still using charts. So it was perfect timing for that. And then, as years went on, the sessions got more into like lead sheets, it wasn't as involved as the thing with the Leprechaun, because the Leprechaun was like an orchestra thing, you know what I mean? So there were, a lot of different types. There were a lot of musical ideas taking place in the song itself, you know what I mean? Some orchestra kind of stuff, some blowing kind of stuff, and I was just, it was a perfect time. That album was a perfect time for me for, how well I was reading. I don't read as well now because I don't do it as much, but reading is the type of thing with reading is it improves when you start doing it, you know what I mean? It all comes back. So I was at the top of my game back then,
And when you got to these sessions, Steve, would you be able to maybe in one or two takes kind of run through a tune, just reading the chart? You didn't.
Yeah, well, back in those days, I mean, a lot of them were, the sessions were 10 to 1, 2 to 5. So you had you had to get, 2 or 3 songs down in the thing. Yeah, and it wasn't until artists started blocking out windows of time, where they stopped booking the sessions by the union schedule, and they started booking it by the day, that you started taking more time on the individual pieces, and and artists had budgets for albums, so they could be creative, and so yeah, it was a good time.
Steve,
Yeah.
you said Paul Simon was one of the early people you work with that would block out a day, right?
Yes, he was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
And then more and more people, in other words, like when I first got there, the records were done, like I said, the sessions were 10 to 1, 2 to 5, 7 to 10. Those were record dates, And then as artists became more big, where they became more popular, more people started blocking out times and doing albums where they spent a lot of time in the studio creatively with the band coming up with stuff. So that was another era in the 70s that happened, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was just going to mention too, there's a great quote from Phil Ramone where he talks about how, I think maybe one of the first times that he worked with you, that you worked on a session he was producing, that you came in and immediately he was able to get a great drum sound. You came in and took no time to get a great drum sound. And, he mentions that like you said, back then it was like, if it was a 3-hour date, you had to get sounds quickly, and piano, drums, everything. And that was, one of the first experiences he had with you. And I'm sure it led to him having you do a whole bunch more sessions,
Yeah, he's the one that hired me to work with Paul Simon,
Yeah.
The guy, so it was a big one.
That's interesting what you said too, Steve, is that when we chose the songs and we went down the list, we tried to, you mentioned that era, which is like sort of a golden era in New York with these sessions where you had to go fast. And then there's a lot of stuff documented in there in the song list where it was something where you played with people and you spent a longer time making up the parts. But then there's also your bands, the Gadd Gang, the Steve Gadd Band. And, it was really cool to see how you brought your voice, to bear in these different situations, right? Remember, I was asking you how what about choosing the songs for your current bands,
Yeah, I mean, it's all about how, the first thing is how they feel. I like things to, have like a good feel no matter what genre it is. It's like nice to lock it into so you can establish a good foundation and so that's, I can do that in my band, pick the songs. Um, I enjoy doing that. And the guys write. I don't really write, but they write and I help, come up with ideas for the form, and maybe we need to put another section here, I'm okay at that stuff. So we all work good together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one more thing I want to say, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Come
Here.
on.
So just to give you a taste of like how cool this was when we worked on the book. So one thing I said to Steve, and I'm going to ask him again now for enjoyment of this conversation. So I had discovered, the Leprechaun and a lot of the more, we'll call it jazz fusion stuff that you played on, Steve, right? And then I got into the Gadd gang. I knew about stuff, wasn't as like versed on it, at that time. And then I got the Gadd gang records and fell in love with them. And I found it really compelling that you were playing what I would describe as like classic R&B and some blues and stuff. And I said, wow, like I heard you playing on all this complex stuff. And then when you had a band that had your name on it, it had these kinds of tunes, Can't Turn You Loose, Watching the River Flow, America the Beautiful, Honky Tonk. And I asked you, was that your favorite music? Is that the music you always wanted to play in a band?
Well, I love all those songs, you know what I mean? And certain, like, I don't know, I sort of grabbed on to Watching the Rivers Flow. We recorded that with Joe Cocker, and Alan Toussaint produced the album, and I fell in love with the song, and so that became a thing. I mean, it just sort of, it's one of those songs that plays itself, or Way Back Home. That's another one I played with Stuff, and I've played it with every band since then, and it always comes out, it's a little different interpretation, but I love the song, you know what I mean? I love that music, and I love the memories of people that I played it with, and playing it with different people, and sharing that kind of groove, and their take on how to play it. Those songs, I love them, man. So
That's a really good question, Joe. That was
I
really
love
good.
them too.
For
Yeah.
anyone that isn't familiar with stuff, doing this book got me deeper into listening to all the Stuff records. I mean, the musical connection, Steve, in that band, especially, obviously with you and T, um, it was so magical, and then and Cornell's playing. I mean, no one played guitar or plays guitar and has the touch and the immediate sound recognition like Cornell. Way Back Home, I mean, it's such classic guitar parts and playing, all the music is just sensational. So I just urge anybody, whether you have the book or don't have the book, you can get the Spotify playlist link on the Hudson website on the product page for Steve's book, for the A Life in
That's cool.
Time book. There's a link at the bottom, and you can copy it, or you can just click and you can listen to the whole, I don't know, it's a lot of songs, 30, 40 songs on the playlist. So, and obviously this stuff is included in there. There's, some magical music that people need to be aware of if you're not. And if you are aware of it, go back and listen to it again.
I learned a lot from playing and Stuff, and I have a lot of great memories. I love all those guys.
Can I
So,
can I play a Stuff song that's it's not it's the Stuff band, but it's Van McCoy, Do the Hustle?
oh yeah,
Should we play that?
Do we need to dance, Johnny?
I want to see everybody dancing.
I'll turn my camera off now.
Uh,
I remember we had a lot of fun on those sessions, you know, listening to playbacks and everyone be dancing and stuff. Those,
Did that
Yeah.
session happen? Did the basic rhythm track come together quickly on that, Steve?
yeah, I think it did, you know, I think it did. Yeah, because we were doing, those sessions were booked like the other, you know, 10 to 1, 2 to 5, 3 hour segments. So they had a certain amount they had to do. And and each time frame. So yeah, they came together pretty quick.
And you guys were all working together, all the time anyway. So it must have just felt good right out of the box, right out of the gate,
Gordon Edwards sounds great,
oh man,
doesn't he?
Steve, when
so beautiful.
we cover this a little bit in the book, but when you were brought together early on with T and Gordon and Cornell and those guys, you talked about how you really wanted to make them comfortable with your feel and your groove and everything. And you talked a little bit about some things in the book, like how did you know they were getting comfortable with you? I mean, aside from them saying, "Hey, it sounded great." Were you watching them for cues? Were you?
Yeah, I was watch T. I watch T's foot, all the time, trying to lock in,
Mm.
and watch Gordon
Would T be tapping his foot like?
all the time. I mean, T had a way of moving when he played that would, let you know what the groove was. You know what I mean? So I paid a lot of attention to try to lock in and to just, it wasn't to make them comfortable. It was I just wanted to fit in. It was about making me comfortable doing what I was doing to, in their type of, in music that they were more fluent in than I was at the time, so, I learned a lot just from listening to those guys and trying to play simple. And then when it was time to play, they'd give you a solo, but when it was time to groove, if you get some weird looks if you did anything funny during the groove.
This
Well,
was all
it's
pre-click track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, had to be. I was just going to say, just on that particular song we just listened to, you got to put in some cool little things, but you never kind of stepped, over the line, so to speak, Steve, in terms of like making it too, but you got to put in some nice little tasty little things, in certain places that lifted the song, like those sections where you move to the ride cymbal and, you don't hear that on a typical disco song. And I think that's what makes that such a hip tune, because it just starts swinging there when you start playing that stuff.
Right. Could you hear the keyboards when you were listening? Did you
Yeah,
hear because I think I had one channel, but T's playing on that was like, it's a strong groove, right?
absolutely. Oh yeah, always.
The
Yeah.
guitar part is great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, John, you mentioned, I think one of the great lessons and one of the most amazing things about Steve's body of work is that, especially in this age of internet drummers where people are playing a zillion notes, and I never take away from anyone that wants to practice enough to play a zillion notes. I mean, that takes a lot of work. But the magic is Steve just always knows what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Oh, instinctively, it's and I was just gonna, before I forget, I made a note about this too. You guys did a fantastic job talking about Steve's equipment over the years too, from like the early days till right now. And I think that's always been for drummers a big mystery. Like, even for me, like what was Steve using for cymbals back in those days? And certainly the drums, the drums evolved the sound and what Steve was using in the early days to, what he's using now. And I was just going to say, what's cool about, again, listening to that song, such an old song, there are those K hi-hats. So any drummer who sort of tunes into that stuff will hear that's those magical K hi-hats and that magical K ride on that record that you hear later on Chick Corea stuff. You hear it on Paul Simon stuff. You managed to make the same equipment, Steve, work for everything you did. You didn't have to. Yeah, I mean that's a sign of a great musician right there.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, man.
We had
Absolutely.
so much help and support, on the equipment side of things, from you and Tony Formosa, who, I don't know,
Tony,
Steve, how
yeah.
many years has Tony been doing your drum stuff in New York? I mean, it's
Been doing it and he moving Eddie Gomez's bass. That's how Eddie introduced me to Tony.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, I think I knew Tony from like back in the 80s, right?
Yeah, yep.
I mean, he was unbelievably helpful, and John, on the symbol side,
Yeah, Tony Formosa is a good guy.
Yeah,
good
And
guy.
yeah,
Really,
his daughter Melanie is a sweetheart. I love her. And I mean, she's a real bright star. You know what I mean?
yeah.
She's a joy to be around, and I love them both.
Oh, that's
we had Joe
fantastic.
Testa in there. Who else,
Oh,
Joe?
Joe,
Yeah,
the
the
Fonz,
Fonz.
The
We
Fonz
had
helped
to.
out.
Fonz was
We had
there.
the Viper.
The Viper, we got the Fonz and the Viper.
Hey, how about if I play another tune where I don't want to keep you guys here all afternoon, but I thought we'd kind of shift gears a little bit and play this song that is definitely a Steve Gadd signature song, Chucky's in Love, Ricky Lee Jones. And maybe Steve, you can give a little commentary afterward on this one.
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Follow.
How come you don't come and PLP with me down at the meter no more? And how come you turn off the TV and hand that sign on the door when we call and we call? How come you say, hey, what could make a boy behave this way? Yeah. Well, he learned all of the lines now, and every time he don't stutter when he talks. It's true, it's true. He shows a quiet that's kind of cool and inspired sort of jazz when he walks. Well, this jacket and his old blue jeans. Hey, if this ain't healthy, it is some kind of clean. But that means that Chucky is in love. Chucky's in love, 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 love. Chucky's in love. Chucky's in love. I don't believe what you're saying to me. This is something that I've got to see. Is he here? I look in the pool hall. Well, is he here? I look in the drugstore. Is it here? No, it don't come here no more. Well, I tell you what, I saw him. He was sitting behind us down at the Pentateuch, and whatever it is that he's got up his sleeve, well, I hope it isn't contagious. What's her name? Is that her there? Oh Christ, I think he's even combed his hair. And is that her? Well, then what's her name? Oh, it's never gonna be the same. That's not her. I know what's wrong. 'Cause Chucky in love with a little girl singing this song. Don't you know Chucky's in love? Yeah, yeah. Chucky's in love, 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 love. Chucky's in love. Chucky's in love. Chucky's in love. Chucky's in love. He's in love, love, love with me.
Come on.
That was my,
Oh.
Russ Titleman and Lenny Warnker produced that, right? Yeah, I remember that session. I didn't remember how slow the song. That's pretty laid back, man.
Oh man.
In the
It's
pocket.
yeah, it kills me every time. And just speaking personally, I remember like a whole bunch of songs like this, not knowing it was you, Steve, till later, like maybe until the early 80s when you sort of found stuff like that out. I guess maybe I didn't own the record or something. But hearing it on the radio and just going, God, this drummer, man, and then realizing so many of these songs were you.
Yeah, I was lucky, man. I was in the right place at the right time, and what I hear in listening back to that now is like, I was really, I'm glad that I got challenged by the groove. You know what I mean? Because I felt good about the pocket, and there was only one fill that was a little bit busy, and that was cool, man. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it only happened once. I haven't heard it in a while, but it was, yeah, it was just sort of enough. You know what I mean? You get whet your
Yeah.
appetite, and then. But I mean, coming from a jazz background, if I hadn't been challenged before that by the groove, I might have tried to play the whole thing like a jazz thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's that
but
discipline. Yeah.
yeah, I thank God I was challenged musically by what was going on in the studios in New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, and I'm glad because we can't we there were some nice things that came out of that.
So
And
let me
just,
ask.
to me,
Oh, go
let me
ahead,
just
Rob.
say,
Yeah.
John, to me that, your choice of like putting that rudimental feel kind of fill in there, it just, you went into your wheelhouse, and it was just like a perfectly placed thing. Just a real quick story.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
this record came out, I was a student at Drummers Collective, and Tommy Breckline was a young stud living on Long Island. He did some teaching at the school, and he was the only guy at the time that could play that fill. So people used to file it into his room and make him play it because no one could figure out what was happening.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I gotta
Tommy, play
tell him
that
that.
fill.
It's
Yeah.
popped in my
Play.
head.
Oh, that's
And
great. No,
it's an easy fill. It's not that hard once I mean, it sounds a little tricky, but once it flows really good.
well, I was two comments, Steve. That's the difference between you being the great disciplined drummer that you are and a hack like me. Because if I could have played that, I'd be playing it all throughout the song, completely fucking it up. But I've always wanted to ask you, like, did you hear like a rough of the tune, like a demo, and then come up with that, or did
No, that was just on the when we did it.
you just had that idea just to
Yeah, back in those days, you didn't hear anything before you got to this. People weren't making demos. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
They would maybe play it live on the piano so you could hear it, but there wasn't. For the
And
most part, you just heard it in the studio.
and you
And
heard that groove in your head when you heard how the tune was going to go. It came to you. You just thought this is rather than
well,
just
I
plays.
mean, I had been practicing that hi-hat stuff, like between takes.
Yeah,
That's how, like, that was another way, well, a similar kind of thing for 50 Ways.
yeah, yeah,
That was just one of the other things that I had been practicing, and it worked out to be a nice fill.
yeah. Man,
That's actually really cool because um, I was listening back to the Asia solo, and Steve, you had like another different motif. You had like a hi-hat opening with a foot, and it felt like that. Like sometimes you'd have an idea you were doing between takes, and then that was an idea that day that came out on the record you were making or something,
Yeah, it
but
could have.
was deployed with taste. And you kept, when we did the Zoom interviews for the book and today, you always talk about being challenged by the groove. And just, I'm looking at the comments that are coming in, and everyone, the foremost groove drummer of our time. For the rest of us, do you think, how can we work on our groove? Do we have to do it on the bandstand? Do we do it with a click at home? Do we do both? How do we do it?
Do it whenever you do it all the time. You know what I mean? It's like that's just like what challenges. If you can establish a feel that that can end up being the inspiration for anything else you do, just because it's feeling so good down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I always remember, Steve, you telling me when I started seriously like getting back into playing about 10 years ago, and you'd say to me, play it slow, don't try to play anything fast. And that really resonated with me, because I think there's a tendency for people to try to do something fast, whether it's a rudiment. I find that just by playing slowly and maybe putting a click on makes me feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's important, when you work with a click, you can really, you can think in turn, you can play an imaginary song, like think of a field for 8 bars, and then think of another field that you have to, for another 8 bars that you might have to play a fill into. And then you can see when those are the places at the change of sections where our body clock will start to rush because we get excited, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, so if you got a click that, you can hear those things and be aware of them before they come, you know what I mean? Because it isn't luck, it's, you have to know where these places are and be aware of them, you know what I mean? That helps keep everything.
Yeah.
The last track on, we talked about America the Beautiful, but on the first Gang, was it I Can't Stop Loving You? Is that the last song on that? Just because I love both of those, I'll try to play to them sometimes. And it's after, you're sort of like, 2 takes, you're like, there's so much freaking space between every note. But I can't make it feel like you, but I mean, for anybody listening, like, I feel like my time got better just trying.
It does.
Like,
That's all. You just have to try, and that's the thing. And you never stop trying. You know what I mean? And sometimes it really feels like magic, and other times you get close to it. But you just always keep trying. You know what I mean?
so a couple of those, I'm listening to UNT, and I'm like, you guys are playing so far in the back, so I'm like, it's like, is there a game going, like, nobody wants to be the first guy in the pool, It's like, so far back.
Yeah. That's well
I just
said.
want to say, I was, watching down the Chucky's in Love chart, and, the little excerpt we had. And to me, for the record, one of the all-time, still to this day, goosebump, drum intros is, I flipped the page and it just makes me smile. We Belong Together.
Yeah.
Right.
If people aren't familiar with that tune and Steve's drum intro on that, it's just an unbelievable, I don't know, 8 bars or of music there that catapults this song to, like, it just launches it into the atmosphere, So I just wanted to say, Steve, it's one of my favorite intros to any song,
I remember that too, and it was like the trouble. There was you could feel one in a different place than it really was, and I'm glad that I understood that, because I think it was a problem for some other people before.
Problem
Man,
for me.
it made, and Buzzy Featon was the guitar player on that thing, and he helped me because he snapped his finger and where it was, and it made me realize that where I thought one wasn't really one. It was that one was anticipated, and but we don't really establish that until the fills come in, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying this now. I think we got to reprint the book. I don't think we got that in the book, right? I never understood where one was. Now I know it was Buzzy's, clicking, snapping his fingers.
Well, the thing was like everyone thought that the downbeat was where the piano notes were,
Right.
but they really were the anticipation of the downbeat.
It was like a displacement almost, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
One of those.
That was the first displacement. I
That
just
was the first Gaddament right there, 1978.
Hey, we should give a shout out to Terry. I don't know Terry, but Terry
Yes.
Brainen, you're the man that transcribed, did such a great job transcribing all this music. Yeah.
Steve, I didn't tell you, Greg Bissonette called yesterday. He just got the book, and he actually left me two lengthy messages on my phone, just raving about the book and raving about the look of the music that is so important to you. I know, we spent unbelievable amounts of time on Gaddaments, making sure everything looked exactly the way you wanted it. But yeah, Terry did an outstanding job, and Greg actually sent a video where he's pointing to the note heads going up and the bass drum notes, the stems going down, and he said, "This is the way it's supposed to be." Tell Steve this book is.
I could totally hear him.
He got all crazy.
I mean, just so
I
you can
love
see it.
Greg, man. I love
Oh,
Greg.
me too. Me too.
If you look at this notation, right, there's you need to put thought into notating something that busy, right? So if you look at this line, for instance, right here, you can see at a glance that Steve's splashing the hi-hat on quarter notes because those stems are facing down, right? If an engraver had connected all the stems up, right, it would be useful, much harder to work on it, because you'd have to look at it for a millisecond longer to understand what was going on with the foot, right? And so, like, most professional drummers that I know can't stand looking at like all stems up notation. So we had a discussion, first Terry and I, then we brought Robin, and then we made sure Steve was on board. But everything we do, certainly Steve's playing, it's designed to make it, the whole idea is the notation should make it easier to practice, even if it's super dense. So, thought went into,
Yeah.
we might not be the brightest guys in the world, but we did think about all of it.
No, it goes to show you guys really thought of everything.
Yeah, we thought about, we wanted well, I mean, I'm talking about Gaddaments now, but like we wanted the music to be friendly, you know what I mean? Not to be scary, you know what I mean? And
Yep. I like that,
I
Steve.
remember the first time sending Steve a proof of some of the music. I think Joe and I were both, really a little nervous because he was so outspoken and particular for very good reasons about Gaddaments. And I mean, we drove this poor fella crazy that was doing all the hand notation. We didn't use any computer, for any of the Gaddament stuff. It was all done by hand. But we were, really relieved when Steve saw the music in the Life and Time book and liked it and kind of signed off on it, because we were like, oh no, what if he doesn't like it? We got to go back to, it's going to be another 6 months, But it was good. It was great. And also I just want to, so Terry Branham for sure, big shout out. And also I just would be remiss in not mentioning Mike Hoff, our designer, who I thought did a superb job laying out the book, making it user-friendly. There's a lot in there, there's a lot of words and photographs, and it's a real puzzle that he put together.
Yeah.
He laid out the cover, he picked the fonts, so yeah, look at that. You got a special one, John.
I got a special one. No, it's laid out beautifully, though. Seriously, it really is.
Mike did a fantastic job.
We have a pretty great team.
I'm just so proud of everybody. I drove them hard. They think we were done. It's like, okay, we're finished. No, we got to get one more interview. We got to get Eddie Gomez. We got to cover this a little more. We need a few more photographs. They were cursing me out, I know, under their breath, but I think
they all stepped up to the plate, man.
Yeah. I couldn't be happier with the team and everybody's effort, including yours, Steve. I remember, a couple of nights you'd call up and say, I'm reading the bio section, and you think I gave enough credit to my grandmother? She was really important in my life. And I'd say, let me read it again in the morning, and I'll call you tomorrow, and we can talk about, the section with your grandmother when you moved into her house,
Yeah.
And another night you called one night late, you said, did I give enough credit and talk enough about my brother? Because he was obviously really important to me, but we grew up together playing and dancing. I just want to make sure, that we talked about him enough. So that's the kind of detail I want everyone to know that Steve looked at this book with. So, it was special and is special. And
Yeah,
thank you for that.
It was
that's
an honor to do that, and especially since I feel like we were a little better set up to do it, Rob, because the first book we did that was sort of like this was with Neil Peart, right? And that was about a specific thing. It was about his touring career. But then we did the book with Stuart Copeland, and that was the first time that Stuart we told his life story, like the early part of his life story. And so I'm glad that I got those two projects under my belt before we
Yeah.
did this book, because this time this is truly, to write a biography is a huge responsibility, and so I'm glad we were ready, at this point. And I wanted to say one last thing about the notation. Something else that was so great to talk to Steve about was, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but you always feel like sometimes when people lay out notation on a computer, whether it's a composer or a drummer, they don't make it so that the way it's broken up to your eye matches the music, right? Which is a big thing for me, right?
Yeah, the computer thing, it's just hard to know where everything starts and stops. I mean, on the computer thing, it starts on the upper left-hand corner and ends at the end. And to try and, if you look away and try to find your way back when you look back to the music, it's just it's generic, you know what I mean? It doesn't have no soul to it. And the handwritten charts, they were done back in the day to help you. You could look at a 3-page chart, and because of the way they marked the signs and the repeats, and they had the correct amount of bars on each staff, so you could look at a staff and know that there were 8 bars, and you didn't have to count every bar. You could sort of, go down and start looking ahead, knowing where you were in the 8-bar phrase, So, but computer things, they don't help. They're hard for me to read. You know what I mean? First of all, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And that stuff just sort of like runs in together. You know what I mean? I don't know do you find it to be that way?
I don't know. I mean, I guess for more of my career, I've been looking at it and I don't mind it. But in A Life in Time, we definitely made it so it was only 4 bars to a line, and so the notes are like separate from each other enough that you could do it. I mean, that you could like parse it and like understand it when you're looking at it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to have the amount of bars on a staff, because then you can get into a way of reading and looking ahead and going back. If they start putting all different amounts of bars on a line, it's just gets confusing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can't take your eye off the chart because
yeah,
one line has 7 bars and the next one has 8 bars. It's like,
yeah, it's crazy. You got
This is like when we were writing the book. I missed this. We got to do this, like, let's just do it anyway, even though we're not writing a book,
Hey, I wanted to play at least one more, maybe 2 more songs before we wrap it up. And this song, I want to say, we talked about Asia, Steve, you and I once before on a separate show that we did, a Track Talk episode, and I know it's covered in great detail in the book. So I hope no one is upset that we're not going to play Asia right now. But my understanding is the next song I'm going to play is the session you were brought out to LA to record, which was You Make Me Feel Like Dancing by Leo Sayer. You were in LA to do that, and then Donald or maybe Gary Katz or the Steely Dan guys, Walter and Donald, knew you were in LA and invited you down to record Asia. So I thought this would be kind of the song that you were brought out to LA to do. You can hear, I certainly won't say similarities between the 2 songs, but what you're playing, I mean, the drums sound very similar to.
I'll tell you something about this recording. Like Richard Perry was producing, and they had already did a rhythm section track that I thought was great. It sounded unbelievable with James Gadsden.
That's right. Yeah.
What Richard Perry wanted there in that one part of the song, that dancing, dancing, where he wanted something different there. And so it reminded me that the groove, that part of the song of like sort of like a Gene Krupa kind of same thing feel. That's what it reminded me of, and I did that, and that was the thing. That was what he was looking for in that section. You know what I mean? So but man, when I heard James Gadsden do it, the thing, it sounded the groove was great. I just tried to copy his groove and then put that other section in, so it worked out good.
That's great. Yeah. James Gadsden. Yeah, man. All right. Well, here we go. You make me feel like dancing.
You've got a cute way of talking. You got the better of me. You just snap your fingers and I'm walking like a dog hanging on your lead. I'm in a spin, shaking on a string, You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I feel like dancing, dancing, dance the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing. Quarter to 4 in the morning. I ain't feeling tight, no. Just hold me tight and leave on the light. 'Cause I don't wanna go home. You put a spell on me. I'm right where you want me to be. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I feel like dancing, dancing, dance the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing. You take me higher. I wanna catch a fire, 'cause you make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I feel like dancing, dancing, dance the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing, dance the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing, dance the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing. You really slip me a potion. I can't get off of the floor. All this perpetual motion. You gotta give me some more. You gotta give me some more. And if you'll let me stay, we'll dance our lives away. You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance my life away. You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance my life away. You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance my life away. You make me feel like dancing. I wanna dance my life away.
Yeah, that little tom part, it's amazing, but it really did remind me, that section of the sing feel.
Yeah.
I just, it's amazing the way it works. One thing triggers another. And in that situation, it worked out good and it was all right.
So
whole-
you were just in the studio, Steve, you heard the basic tune and you just said, let me try this part there. That's the way it just organically.
Yeah, that he wanted something different in that section. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's what it just sounded like, a sing feel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. That's
So-
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where that section reminded me musically of another period of time, and where I just went for it and it worked.
But what you play throughout the rest of the song during the verses and I mean, it's just some of the most masterful. And again, I can't help but I said it sort of awkwardly before the song, but I guess the best way to describe it is it's why producers, artists love you so much is you play the perfect part for every song. I mean, it's just the most perfect. That to me is like that song is some of the greatest drumming ever, I think, and people watching seem to agree. I mean, it's.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
One guy commented, "I give up. Who wants to buy my drums?"
No,
No, that's not what we're trying to do here, man.
No, yeah, I know. No, I think it's very inspiring for people, and before we close out, I want to make sure that Rob and Joe, if you want to talk about how people can get the book, I think it's pretty simple, right? Hudson Music.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. Or they could drive over to Steve's house. He has them in his garage. He's, him and Carol are out there every day. They got like little hats on and they're,
They get those little belts that make change.
little
too.
change. Yeah, they got a little thing going. Stefano, you want to talk about, you're a hard man to, I wish I had your mileage to use for like a free flight, the last 2 months. It's amazing your schedule. I don't know how you do it, but do you want to mention any of the things you've done lately or coming up?
I did an album in Germany. Will Lee was on it with this keyboard player, Simon Auslander, and man, he wrote some great songs. You could tell he likes Richard too. He likes Richard T a lot, and it was a lot of fun. And there's another little trio that two guys from Copenhagen that we do things together. Michael Blicker and Dan Hemmer. So we're going to be doing some touring, and my own band. We're going to Japan in a week for a couple of weeks, and then I'll be out with James Taylor later on this year.
And weren't you just in the UK doing something with some guitar player?
I did something with David Gilmour.
Oh,
and which was fantastic. I loved it. I never had met him before, and it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Really nice, great music, and enjoy it.
That's going to be fun to hear that. Well, guys, before we close out, should we play one more song?
What about America the Beautiful?
I couldn't find it, Steve.
I have it.
You have it. Okay.
Yeah, hang on. Let me see if I can get you guys to hear it.
If this doesn't work, then play Lenore. But did you ever hear America the Beautiful, John?
I'm sure I have, Steve, because I think I have the CD, but I don't have it in my library. From Here and Now, you said, right? Wow, man.
If that's not an apropos close, I don't know what is.
There's no better song to close out with than that. Wow.
Right?
I feel like I went to church.
Good for the
Yeah,
soul,
absolutely.
Stefano. Thank you. Thank you. It's
Thanks,
good for the
guys.
soul.
Thank you, Steve. Well, guys, hang with me if you would for just one more second. We'll say goodbye to everybody. I want to thank everybody for watching today, and I want to give a big hand to Rob Wallace, Joe Bergamini, and returning champion, the one and only Steve Gadd. I love you guys, all you guys, so much. Thank you for being here today with me. And everybody, if you don't have this book already, go out and get it. You have to get this book. It's just so great. It's so great. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon. Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Speak soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, well, that's my show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like, leave me a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And the podcast is available on all the podcast platforms, so download it. And remember, no drummers are ever harmed on Live from My Drum Room or Track Talk. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. All right. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again real soon. See ya.